Some voices rise from the streets and never stop echoing, even after the gunfire fades. In this episode, we followed a night of a legend whose death sparked questions, theories, and an unending legacy. The Tupac Shakur case opens. This is Memento Mori. Won't you spare me over another? Our mission today is pretty laser-focused. We're taking the source material on the final hours of Tupac Shakur, September 7, 1996, in Las Vegas. But we want to go beyond just the basic timeline. We really need to understand the toxic environment that, allowed this to happen, the specific chain of events, and why all these years later, this is still one of the most frustrating mysteries out there.
It's essential. And to get that night, you first have to appreciate the sheer scale of the conflict that defined 1996. Las Vegas, that weekend, wasn't just a party town, it was a pressure cooker. And the West Coast-East Coast hip-hop rivalry was just destined to erupt there.
And we're talking about the biggest players in the game. You had Death Row Records, totally dominated by Suge Knight, with Tupac as their, undisputed star.
Exactly. And on the other side, Bad Boy Records, with Sean Puffy Combs out front.
Right.
And this was so far beyond just, industry competition. The sources paint 1996 as a year of genuine escalating threat. The rivalry wasn't just in the music anymore.
It had gotten personal.
Deeply personal.
Yeah.
And tied up with money, street cred, powerful loyalties. So conflict wasn't just possible that night. It felt inevitable.
And Tupac, more than anyone, he just embodied that whole volatile mix. The materials we looked at do a really compelling job of capturing his duality.
They really do.
On one hand, you have this profound social critic, the poet, drawing on his family history, on figures like Bob Marley. But on the other, he lived by this rigid code he called thug life.
And that code is so crucial for context here. Thug life wasn't just about criminality. For him, it was a philosophy, a code of honor, of resilience against poverty and injustice.
But when you put that philosophy inside the death row power structure,
it turned him into both a cultural hero for millions and, tragically, a very, very visible target. The sources say it over and over again. His life was on a danger line long before he even got to the MGM Grand that night.
It sounds less like a celebration and more like a conflict just waiting for a spark.
That is precisely what it was.
Okay, so let's get into that evening. The setting is the MGM Grand Garden Arena. The event is the Bruce Seldon versus Mike Tyson fight. So everyone who is anyone in hip-hop, friend or foe, they're all in one building.
And the location itself just adds to the danger. This isn't a controlled concert venue. It's chaotic. It's high profile. And the sources are very specific here. The trigger event, the thing that set it all off, happened about an hour before the shooting. Not during the fight, but deep inside the hotel corridors.
And this wasn't just a few heated words.
No. This was a full-on physical brawl. Tupac and the Death Row crew ran into a group that was allegedly tied to the Bad Boy camp. And the key detail is that Tupac's team violently attacked one specific person from that rival group. The sources really stressed this wasn't random. It was direct.
And that one act of violence just changed the entire night. It completely poisoned Tupac's mindset. You can see it in the accounts. He's both guarded because he knows he just made a huge enemy in a very public place.
Right.
And also enraged, fired up, like he had to defend Death Row's reputation right then and there.
That fight confirmed that all that tension had finally boiled over into actual violence. In front of the media, in front of everyone, it created an immediate need for reprisal.
Which brings us to that disastrous decision after the fight. It ends late, after midnight. The smart move would have been to leave, to cool off.
But they didn't. Instead, Tupac and Suge Knight decided to keep the night going, head out into the city.
And this is where we get to the really critical details. Their ride.
Yes. Suge Knight's personal car, a big black BMW 750iL. And for those of you who don't know the model, this wasn't just a car, it was a high-end luxury flagship, almost like a tank. It's a vehicle you'd associate with executive protection.
And this is where the sources point out that one incredibly strange detail, the detail that seals his fate. Tupac was sitting in the back seat, on the passenger side.
Which was completely out of character.
Totally. Everyone says he always rode up front, shotgun. But that one small change in routine put him directly in the line of fire later. The car had 4 people total.
And if you look at the timeline, everything just speeds up from there. Around 10:55 p.m., the BMW turns off Las Vegas Boulevard onto East Flamingo Road. A few minutes later, they're stopped at a red light. and a large white Cadillac Escalade pulls up right next to them.
And the accounts all suggest this wasn't a coincidence.
No way.
It felt planned. The Cadillac didn't just pass them, it sat there. The BMW moves on, but the Cadillac stays right on their tail. They were being pursued. They knew exactly who was in that car.
And it connects right back to that code of conduct. The brawl at the MGM demanded an immediate and violent answer. The attackers didn't need a map, they just had to find the most visible target leaving the scene.
And the final confrontation happens less than 10 minutes later.
Precisely. The fatal stop was near the entrance of the MGM Grand. It's a chilling detail that they ended up right back where the conflict started. The time is about 11:10 p.m. The BMW is forced to stop again. Another red light.
And that was it. The trap was sprung. The sources described the Cadillac pulling up right alongside the passenger side, exactly where Tupac was sitting. The back window comes down, and someone inside just unloads. Witnesses described it as a terrifying amount of gunfire.
We're talking 12 to 15 rounds,
Wow.
all aimed specifically at that rear passenger area.
And the impact was devastatingly precise.
It was. Suge Knight, who was driving, he got grazed. Relatively minor injuries.
Yeah.
But Tupac, sitting right in the line of fire, he was hit 4 times. Chest, pelvis. The shots were fatal.
And that, of course, brings us to the question that has haunted this case ever since. Who is the shooter? The sources consistently bring up one name, the prime suspect.
Orlando Anderson.
Orlando Anderson.
He was, of course, the person who was attacked by Tupac's crew in that brawl earlier. The motive is right there. Reprisal. But, and this is critical, we have to emphasize that while the theory is strong, Anderson always publicly denied it. And law enforcement never found that one piece of conclusive, undeniable evidence to tie him to the gun.
The chaos didn't stop with the shooting. What happened next, the decision that was made, might have changed everything.
It's a deeply controversial point in the story. The sources suggest that instead of waiting for police or an ambulance, Suge Knight drove away from the scene with a critically injured Tupac in the car.
Why?
Well, the claim is that he drove for a bit before finally stopping for help. This created a delay in getting Tupac to the University Medical Center.
And that delay, people still argue that it could have cost Tupac his only chance at survival.
Whether it was panic or maybe a deep distrust of authority, the result was lost time. Critical time for a man bleeding out from multiple gunshot wounds.
And when he finally got to the hospital,
His condition was dire. Massive internal bleeding, trauma. They put him in a medically induced coma. But there is a witness account of some of his last conscious words. He allegedly said things that they suggest regret or maybe acceptance, phrases that have been interpreted as "I acted foolishly," and then just devastatingly, "I'm leaving hell."
he fought for 6 days, but the injuries were too severe. Tupac died on September 13th, 1996. And for the world, it was just a massive shockwave. This wasn't just a musician. He was an icon who had almost prophesied his own violent death. The whole thing became this huge global media event.
So we fast forward. What does this deep dive into the sources really tell us? It reveals a case that is still officially unsolved, and that's turned it into this breeding ground for speculation.
Okay.
I think that the consensus among people who follow this is that the real truth is still buried somewhere.
Okay, and this is where the real deep dive starts. The sources lay out 3 major theories that keep this case from ever really closing. Let's start with the first one, which is maybe the most shocking, Suge Knight's possible role.
It's a dark theory. It suggests that Knight was somehow involved, that he betrayed Tupac. The logic behind it usually points to the internal conflicts happening at Death Row Records. Tupac was reportedly getting unhappy with Knight's management, with the label's finances. It suggests a rift over money and control that might have been even more dangerous than the rivalry with Bad Boy.
So the motive wasn't just a street beef. It was a business decision for Suge Knight.
That's the argument, yeah. It's fueled by what we know about Knight's later legal troubles, his reputation for being ruthless. The sources point out that in that world where money is everything, this internal conflict gives you a terrifyingly plausible motive for betrayal.
It forces you to look inside Death Row, not just at the rivalry outside.
Exactly.
Okay, theory number 2. This one expands the scope way out. It talks about underground connections.
This is critical. It acknowledges the world Tupac and Knight were living in, a world where the music business and organized crime, well, they overlapped a lot. The suspicion here is that the murder was bigger than just 2 record labels. The sources hint that powerful figures, maybe organized crime groups connected to people high up in Tupac's circle, ordered the hit.
Meaning the official investigation was up against a power structure it couldn't even touch.
Precisely. That line of thinking would explain why the evidence trail went cold so fast, why key witnesses just seemed to vanish. It suggests the real culprit was someone who gained from disrupting the entire West Coast rap scene, not just from winning a feud.
And that brings us to the last theory, the one that feels the most human and maybe the most tragic explanation for why it's still unsolved. The Code of Silence.
This is all about fear. The sources strongly suggest that any potential witnesses, people of the Cadillac, maybe even people in Suge's own car, they were far more afraid of speaking out than they were of the police. In that world, if you cooperate with law enforcement, you're signing your own death warrant. It basically guarantees the truth never gets spoken in a courtroom.
And that fear allowed the case to just be written off. It let authorities maybe dismiss it as just another street fight, unsolvable gang violence. The code of the street was stronger than the rule of law.
And that, I think, is the ultimate takeaway here. Tupac's death is this profound tragedy about the destructive power of media-fueled competition mixed with real street violence. The simple question of who pulled the trigger is still just a ghost, haunting the neon lights of Vegas.
It's a tragic synthesis, really. You have immense fame, a deadly rivalry, and this huge internal conflict all crashing together in one chaotic, unresolved moment at a red light. It's just a devastating reminder that these bloody rivalries always have a terrible cost.
And if you look at the facts, the tragedy isn't just the loss of his life, it's the systemic failure to get justice. Because of the world these men moved in, the violence that was in his lyrics, it ultimately consumed him in real life.
So, given the detail in the sources about that Code of Silence, about those alleged underground connections, here's a final thought for you to consider. How much truth in cases like this is just permanently lost to fear, simply because people are too afraid of reprisal, and that's regardless of how hard the police might try. That silence, that might be the true killer in this investigation. Thank you for listening. To ensure you don't miss the next file in the Memento Mori collection, please like this video and subscribe. Until we meet again in the next dark story.